Graphing a linear inequality in the plane, slope-intercept form. So my problem here says I need to graph the inequality. And I have y is less than negative 3x minus 1. So the first thing I want to do is graph the boundary line here. Because when I graph inequalities in the plane, I know I'm going to be shading to one side or the other. So I need my boundary line. And my boundary line is going to be the corresponding equation to this inequality, or I'm going to swap out that less than or that inequality sign with just a plain old equals momentarily. So I'm going to graph y equals negative 3x minus 1 as my boundary line. This is in slope-intercept form, so I'm going to start with the y-intercept, the negative 1, okay? Slope-intercept form is mx plus b. My y-intercept, or my b value, is negative 1. So I'm going to put a dot on my y-axis at negative 1. And then my slope, or the m value in this equation, is negative 3. So I'm going to use that slope now to get some other points on my line. So as a fraction, this would be negative 3 over 1. Slope is rise over run. So from this y-intercept value, I'm going to go down 3 over 1. So down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1. Do this a few times. If I want a few more points up this way, I can just reverse this in both directions. So instead of down 3 over 1, I'll go up 3, back 1. Up 3, back 1. To give myself a few points in this other direction, up 3, back 1. Up 3, back 1. Now that I have several dots there to help me draw in an accurate line, I'm going to line up my ruler here to these dots so I can put in my boundary line here. But before I can actually draw this in, I need to go back to my original inequality and decide if this line I'm going to draw in is going to be a solid line or a dashed line. So for a solid line, I would need my inequality symbol to have an or equal to component to it. So the less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. And dashed or dotted lines we use when we're graphing a strict inequality, strictly less than or strictly greater than. And since the inequality that I'm trying to graph here is a less than, I'm going to use a dashed line. So line up my ruler here, and I'm going to just kind of put dashes in between the dots that I already have there. So there's my boundary line, right? I basically graphed this line, y equals negative 3x minus 1, but because my inequality is a strict less than, I made it a dashed line when I drew it in. Now, I need to decide which side of this line I'm going to shade, okay? To the left, this direction, or to the right, that direction, in the coordinate plane. Now, the way I like to remember this is if you think of this line, since it's a slanted line, as a mountain or a hillside, okay? And you picture yourself standing on this hillside, okay? Now this is a pretty steep hillside, but kind of picture yourself hiking up a pretty steep hill right here, or actually going down this slope, okay? Because this is a negative slope. You want to think to yourself, am I shading above or below? Now, if you were on this hillside, above you would be the sky, okay? Below you would be the mountain or the earth. So are we going to shade sky or mountain? Okay, you can go back to your original inequality here and think to yourself, okay, I need to shade below the boundary line. okay? I need to shade below or less than the boundary line. So I'm going to shade what would be below me if I was picturing myself standing on this steep hillside, or the mountain. So I would shade this side of my graph. So I'm going to go ahead and just shade this in, and as soon as I have it all shaded in, I have completed graphing my inequality. So in short, right, use the slope and the y-intercept to graph your boundary line. Decide if you're going to have a dashed or a solid line when you draw it in, and then decide which side do I shade. If you have a slanted line, think above the line would be sky if you were hiking, below the line mountain.